All right, let's start this way. Anybody recognize this? Yeah, it's The Office, right? It's one of the most successful TV sitcoms of all time. And in large part, that was because of, Michael Scott, the character who said things like this. He said, I'm both a night owl and an early bird, so I'm wise, and I have worms. And he says things like this one. He says, sometimes I start a sentence and I don't know where it's going. I just hope to find it somewhere along the way. The Office. It's a sitcom. Here's what that means. It means it's a TV show with recurring characters that face some kind of tension in life. But all of the tension and all of their struggles and all of their woes, they all remarkably resolve in exactly 30 minutes. 22 if you don't count commercials. A lot of people want the passages in the Bible to be like a sitcom. Clear, simple, tidy. We're teaching through the Old Testament book of 1 Kings. Today we get to chapter 9. And at first read, 1 Kings chapter 9, it seems like a sitcom. Clear, simple, tidy. Warning, it's not. Here's how it begins. Verses 1 and 2 said, when Solomon had finished building the temple of the Lord and the royal palace and had achieved all he had desired to do, the Lord appeared to him a second time. So after being granted wisdom, after building a palace, after building a temple, after dedicating this temple, God appears to Solomon and God has something to say. Next verse 3, the Lord said to him, I have heard the prayer and plea you have made before me. I have consecrated this temple, which you have built by putting my name there forever. My eyes and my heart will always be there. So that's God's way of saying yes to chapter 8, right? The chapter just before this one. God is saying yes to Solomon's prayer of dedication in chapter 8. But God, he's not done talking yet. He continues. Verse 4. As for you, if. Pause. If. That means what is coming next is a conditional statement. If this, then that. If we want to understand 1 Kings chapter 9, then we have to understand conditional statements. Conditional statements are at the very center of this chapter. So I want to kind of catch us up to speed on that. Give us a couple examples. Here's one example. A conditional statement. If you are running behind, then you are going to miss every traffic light. Conditional statement. Or this one, example. If, like me, you are a Los Angeles Dodger fan, then you are having a great weekend. It's a conditional statement. If statements are conditional statements. It's saying, if you do this, then you will get that. Okay, here we go. Listen for it. Verse 4. As for you, if, there's the conditional, you walk before me faithfully with integrity of heart and uprightness, as David your father did, and do all I command, and observe my decrees and laws. Now, here comes the then. It's implied in this verse. God says, I will establish your royal throne over Israel forever. In other words, if you obey me, good things are going to happen. So let's put that right up here. Teaching Jesus did a lot of teaching. And understand, Jesus, for him, teaching, it wasn't just something that he did to pass time until the crucifixion. Teaching wasn't a dispensable part of Jesus' ministry. Teaching, it was an irreplaceable part of Jesus' ministry. People, they were drawn to Jesus, well, because of his teaching. Matthew tells us this, chapter 7, verse 28. He says, when Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching. See, there was something different about the teaching of Jesus. When Jesus taught, he connected with the way things are. There are certain principles that are built into creation. If we do this, then we will get that. Jesus, well, he knew these things, and so Jesus, he taught these things. Wisdom. We call that wisdom. Well, the purpose of the teaching of Jesus, it wasn't to limit us. It was to protect us. He loves us, and he wants to guide us. See, we don't forgive because we so deeply feel like forgiving. But we forgive because Jesus taught bitterness will never heal the wound. We give when we would rather spend because we recognize Jesus' teaching, saying that a self-absorbed life is not the best way to live. We abstain from such and such activity because we trust that Jesus, that he knows what is best. The power to choose God's way, that instead of just acting on our own innate impulses, that is a defining opportunity of being human. I mean, the animals, they can't do that. You and I, we can. Now, one note of clarification here, or this teaching in 1 Kings chapter 9 can get really misconstrued. Here it is. Obedience, talking a lot about obedience here. Obedience will not get you into heaven. Clear? We are not saved by how well we obey or disobey. Heaven is not earned by our behavior. No one deserves it. Jesus, he wouldn't have gone to all the work and all the pain of giving his life on the cross, well, if we could do it without him. Salvation, it's about recognizing, well, I need him. I need what he did. I accept what Jesus did on that cross in my place. See, obedience, obeying, it doesn't save your soul. But 1 Kings chapter 9 shows us, well, obedience, it can bless your life. Well, that's the first part of this chapter, 1 Kings chapter 9, but there's more. There's a second conditional statement. Okay, verses 6 and 7. But if, condition, if you or your descendants turn away from me and do not observe the commands and decrees I have given you and go off to serve other gods and worship them, then I will cut off Israel from the land I have given them. Well, that's no fun. Right, well, that would be a little different than this first one. That one would be saying this: if we don't obey, well, then bad things are going to happen. See, sin, it might be wildly popular, but it is not your friend. God is saying in 1 Kings chapter 9, it's dangerous, it's costly, and we can typically justify it. Well, I have a reason. Well, I have an explanation. Well, I have an excuse. Or it's not my fault. I had a better idea. Or I'm the exception to this rule. It doesn't work that way. God designed and created this world to work in a certain way. And when our lives align with that way, well, there's blessing. When our lives don't align with that, consequence. Do you ever ask or expect God to bless you when you're not obeying? God, I did some damage with my tongue. I got angry. Things got messy. I need you to bless this situation. Or, God, I really, really like this guy. He's not a Christian, but I'm sleeping with him. Help him to find you. That's expecting the opposite of this. The opposite of what God is saying in 1 Kings chapter 9. God doesn't work that way. And understand, God, he's not some OCD micromanager bossing us around, telling us what not to do. He's good. He made this world. He knows the way that it works. He knows what's good for us. His instructions are good for us. He wants us to experience meaning, and he wants us to experience fulfillment.
Sorry.
Hi, Jill.
TV's not happy today. I'm going to have to pivot.
What do you want to pivot to?
You get to talk, and I'm going to take the TV off.
We lose the TV today. All right, you're just going to be stuck with me. I hope that works. Well, we look at it, and let me go back and say, we say sometimes, we expect God to do something like that in 1 Kings chapter 9. But it doesn't happen that way. God's plan, he wants to bless our lives. He wants to fulfill our lives. He doesn't want us to get stuck. He doesn't want us to get addicted. He doesn't want us to get hurt. He doesn't want us to hurt other people. You know what 1 Kings chapter 9, you know what it kind of sounds like? Kind of sounds like a sitcom. Clear, simple, tidy. 22 minutes of drama, and then everything is hunky-dory again. Does it work that way for you? Not for me. I remember when I was in school one time, there's a spelling test the next day, and I didn't study. I decided, I want to try I'm going to use a cheat sheet. You know what happened? Well, I didn't fail. I didn't get caught. Actually, I aced that test. 100. How do you reconcile that with 1 Kings chapter 9? Or a few days ago, I drove 30 minutes to help someone. I'm like, oh, that's good. That would qualify as obeying, right? Well, do you know what happened? On the way back home, I got a flat tire. I'm like, come on, man. That's not the way it's supposed to happen. But sometimes it does. And it's not just for us. We can look at the Bible. How about Joseph? Joseph, this guy, he resisted. He didn't give in to Potiphar's wife. He ends up in prison. Or how about Moses? Moses courageously led the people of Israel out of Egypt. But he didn't get a step foot in the promised land. How about John the Baptist? He was pointing people to Jesus. But he got beheaded. How do you reconcile 1 Kings chapter 9? How do you reconcile that with this? You know why I think a lot of people give up on Christianity? Because they've tried it and it doesn't work. They're like, it didn't work for me. The cancer, it didn't go away. Infertility, it happened. Friends disappoint, significant others cheat. Jobs get hard, loved ones die. Like my life hurts. Christianity, it must not be working. I'm trying to follow Jesus, but why isn't it working like this in 1 Kings chapter 9? Obey and you're blessed. Don't obey and you're not going to be blessed. Why doesn't it always work that way in my life? Ever wonder, ever ask that question? Well, I want to go there. And I think there can be more than one reason why it plays out that way. One of them is this. Let me get at it this way. Here's the way that it used to work with the Van Rees kids. I would say something like, okay, kids, time for bed. Nothing. Crickets. But if I would say something along the lines of, hey, who wants a bedtime snack? They could hear that for blocks away. What do we call that? Well, that's called selective listening, selective obedience. We can do that same kind of thing with the Bible. Let me show you. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. We can read that and say, yes, 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 I love that verse. I'm going to take that verse. I'm going to put that verse on my mirror. Matthew 5:44. Jesus said, I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. What? Pray for my enemies? Pray for the people that I don't like? Well, no. I'm not going to do that. I'm certainly not going to put that verse on my mirror. You know, I follow some of the verses in the Bible, but not all of them. That's not just selective listening, that's selective obedience. You want a synonym for selective obedience? Disobedience. And there's also this, conditional obedience. We could say things like, okay, God, I'm in, I'll do it if it's not too uncomfortable, or if it doesn't change my plans. I'll obey as long as I see the results I want to see. Well, God, He's not going to show you steps 4, 5, and 6 until you take steps 1, 2, and 3. We can say, well, I'll tell the truth if it doesn't get me in trouble. Well, I'll honor the Sabbath if I'm not too busy. You scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. You provide for me and I'll obey you. That's conditional obedience. Want a synonym for conditional obedience? Disobedience. And there's also this, partial obedience. It's not blatant, it's not in your face, it's partial. Say, well, I didn't lie, I just didn't tell the whole truth. Well, I don't openly abuse my spouse, I just don't proactively seek out ways to serve and encourage them. Or say, I don't openly defy my parents, I just choose to hide things from them. That's partial obedience. Want a synonym for partial obedience? Disobedience. 1 Kings chapter 9, verses 4 and 5. As for you, if you walk before me faithfully with integrity of heart and uprightness, as David your father did, and do all I have commanded, and observe my decrees and laws, I will establish your royal throne over Israel forever. If you obey God, good things are going to happen. If you hear that today, but you're not experiencing that, if your life isn't experiencing that, you say, well, why? Well, it could be because selective obedience isn't really obedience. Or it could be because conditional obedience isn't really obedience. It could be because partial obedience isn't really obedience? 1 Kings chapter 9. Obey and good things are going to happen. Don't obey and bad things are going to happen. Read that and we think, well, that's clean and that's clear and that's simple and that's tidy. And that's incomplete. I don't know how it works for you, but for me, life isn't a 22-minute sitcom. Things don't happily all come together at the end. So let's look at this from a different perspective. I want to show you a picture. So that's a young LeBron James. Somebody give that man a shirt that fits. Well, LeBron doesn't look like that anymore. Today, LeBron, he looks like this. He grew some guns, right? He got bigger. He got stronger. He got more muscle mass. And maybe you're like, well, how? How did he do that? How did that happen? How did he get bigger? How did he get stronger? How did he get more muscular? Well, we know how that works. Muscle doesn't develop by just sitting on the couch. Muscle grows from training, specifically resistance training. Muscles grow when they are needed. Muscles grow when they are used. Resistance creates growth. True with your body. True with your spirit. 1 Kings chapter 9, God is asking, well, how about you? Is there any resistance that you are experiencing today? When you are following Jesus, but it doesn't work like 1 Kings chapter 9 is saying, obey God and going to be good things. Don't obey God and there's going to be bad things. When your life isn't working like that, stop, reflect, and ask this question. Ask, well, why? Why? And there's two feasible answers. One is this: you're not really obeying. And I know that's not a fun word to hear, but that can be a reality. One of the reasons is because you're not really obeying, living out of alignment with the way God created this world to work. It's going to be a bumpy ride. And God's asking, is there anything in your life today that is out of alignment? If yes, do something about that. Do you know the best way to stop doing something? Stop doing it. The best way to start doing something? Start doing it. I know, you're thinking, yeah, thanks a lot, Captain Obvious. But that's true. You and I, we do have the capacity to change. We have the power to choose God's way rather than just act on our innate impulses. That is a defining human opportunity. If there is something in your life that is out of alignment with God, do something about that. If you're not out of alignment, there is another option. Option number 2. When we don't experience 1 Kings chapter 9, where he's talking about, well, when we obey, good things are going to happen. When we don't obey, bad things are going to happen. When we don't experience that, remember this: God, He doesn't define good the same way that we do. I want to be happy. God wants me to be holy. I want great comfort. God wants me to have great character. I want to feel good. God wants me to be good. God, He does some of His best, deepest work in us while adversity surrounds us. difficulty can transform us in remarkable ways that make the process valuable, even if it's not enjoyable. God consistently uses challenging seasons to refine us, to shape us, to grow us, to mature us. See, there is a greater good. There is a bigger plan. There is a deeper purpose. Don't spend your life waiting for all your circumstances to favorably align with your plan. Find peace by trusting God. He's got a plan. He doesn't always protect us from. Sometimes he grows us through.